Okay, so we will start. Good evening to everyone, and welcome to this HiCoMa Roundtable. Island Community Manager, it's the name of the project. I am Fabio Malfatti, and it's a real pleasure to guide this today conversation because it's something really, really new and interesting. Um, my voice could be lower because I had a bad flu, but I will try to, with the help of the bees, with milk and honey, to help my voice. So, HiCoMa, it's an Erasmus Plus project. It's intended to train, to help professional and policymakers, citizens, to become more effective in their management of the communities where they live in rural island areas, but not only. We are building skills and networks to help the governance of these areas, to invent new ideas, to help resilience and innovation. The September thematics is about environmental sustainability and climate resilience. And today we will explore a part of this, the connection between research, community project, and innovative practices that can help to preserve and manage ecosystem and give strength the rural livelihoods, but to the livelihoods in other places. Now we have two panelists here, and it's very important because we connect two parts of that sometimes are not that connected. So we have Andrew Mathews, that's a full professor of anthropology at University of California, Santa Cruz, and author of The Trees Are Shapeshifters. And his work it's focused on forest, wildfire, and rural landscapes. He works in Mexico, Italy, and California, so has a wide point of view. And from the other side, we have Silvia Rova. She's a program manager of the International Center for Climate Change Research and Studies, and she's a researcher of Ca' Foscari University in Venice. And she studied the ecosystem services and in coastal and marine areas, connecting ecological research with policy and community well-being. So we have the mountain and the sea, and this is really something something new for us, but it's really interesting. I just start with a little thought. A few days ago, I was reading an email, and there were phrases that catch my imagination. Now, you can't solve the Rubik cube focusing only on one color, and this is the center of the metaphor of the HiCoMa Highland Community Manager project. We need to consider all the different sides of the problem, because we risk to solve one phase, to have the yellow dawn, and you make big chaos in all the other five phases. So six. Okay, sometimes I have some doubt. And so this is the center of this discussion. Now, how we can put together the two sides. But the example is simple. In 2018, on Monte Pisani fire, after the fire start to analyze, and there were deep impact on climate of the valleys, but too in the sediment transportation of Arno River and in the delta of the river. So we cannot disconnect sea and mountain as they were just separate, two different problems. So we are today we are trying to understand how you are working in your space, and how we can connect this to different spaces. So as usual, I recommend to be quite concise, but we have more time than usual, so don't worry. We start with the first round. You have a bit more time. generally give 3 minutes, but you can take 4 without problem. And you can just complete my ultra short presentation and synthetic presentation, so you can add what you want. So I give the first word to Andrew, and I'm asking how. Okay, your research it's working on how landscapes uh, themselves record histories and of cultivation, abandonment, climate change. What can rural communities in general, learn from these landscape memories to build a better climate resilience today? Andrew.
Great question. I'll try to speak slowly, and if I'm too fast, wave your hand. So I would say that climate change is often understood as this sort of rather alien, hard to imagine abstract force. And of course, most of us don't live inside climate models. Even the climate modelers don't. And so for me, people's knowledge about their landscapes is their way of understanding environmental change in the world around them. And it motivates them to act, to change, to do, to transform, right? So I think the starting point from so really any environmental policy, but certainly for climate change, is you have to start with what people know and observe and care about in the landscapes that surround them. And you have to start with what they know about the landscapes they live in. And very often, there are histories of landscape use and transformation. So cultivation, burning, uh, building drainage systems, which are partially known, maybe by old people, maybe even forgotten, but all of these histories can inform our present day choices. So we live, if you like, with the legacies, with what is the residues of all of the previous landscape practices, and that gives us some ideas about what to do in the future. And I'll give you maybe two brief examples to show you that. One is actually that, as Fabio knows, on the Monte Pisano after the fire, people really wanted to do something important to protect, to remedy the impacts of the fire, because many trees had been burned. So they decided to plant lots of trees. But in many cases, planting is not the right response because it makes us concentrate on the moment of planting and not think about the longer term process that caused the tree to disappear in the first place. And if you think about that longer term or large scale process, then if you address that, the trees will come back by themselves. And as Fabio and I both know, of course, what happened on the Monte Pisano reforestation is that many or most of the replanted trees either died or did not do very well, but the few remaining trees provided the seed source for very healthy, vigorous regrowth. So the absence of trees is not the problem. It's the absence of disturbance and of fire and grazing that's the problem. So I would say if we had not, people had thought more about the histories of grazing by sheep and goats, the history of burning by shepherds sometimes, which maintained the landscape, they would have a better understanding of why that fire was there and of how forests might respond to it. And that gives me maybe my second example, which is that really across the Mediterranean and actually in California also, right? We have a history of very intense anti-fire language by the state and anti-fire regulations. And there's a history of why that is the case. I mean, in Italy, it's a lot to do with fears of soil erosion caused by deforestation and concern about landslides and floods. And some of that is correct, some of that is not. But the net effect of that was to create huge official and popular, urban ignorance about who burned and why they burned and how they burned, and ignoring the fact that we think that there's a long history of small, cool, and controlled fires that were used to maintain the landscape. So when we don't understand the landscape history, we might see the moment of burning as a terrible disturbance. If we think about the history of the landscape, we might think, oh, well, okay, this fire burns here every 10 years, every 20 years, every 30 years. It's not too bad. Or we might say that across the scale of the landscape, this fire burns over here, but not over there. Or we might see the landscape as having continually shifting patches of disturbance, which keep the landscape in good shape, that maintain it, right? So we have to welcome and accept the role of disturbance in the landscape, but we can only make sense of disturbance if we situate it in relation to history, like how often, and scale, how big. So those are maybe just two examples of how history matters. Landscape history matters for thinking about what to do, and also perhaps the ignoring, the official silencing and destruction and stigmatization of traditional land management practices. I don't know how long I talked, so I'm sorry, but I'll stop there.
But it's not a problem because everything is balanced for 3 and we are in between 2, so it's not a problem this. But your point is really, really interesting. I observed about the planting trees that it's really expensive. It's between 20 and 60 euro each tree on Monte Pisano, and the survival rate's 70%, but you have to go to put water every year in the summer. So it's not easy. So the idea is now to keep the plants that are growing, help them to grow faster instead of planting others. So this is the first image that you gave. And now I pass the floor to Silvia, because you just present your work, your work on biology and ecosystem service and coastal and marine systems. Just I'm curious to understand how it works and how we can connect your work with the rural and the highland areas, to understand how we need to exchange information and knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Fabio, for giving me the floor. I'll shortly introduce myself. Well, it's not easy for me to give a label to myself, as I'm kind of shifting from a career of research to a career of more organizing a new research center. So it's a big shift for me. But nevertheless, I feel I am an ecologist. So I am a biologist by training. Then I shifted to a focus on ecology and climate change, and especially on understanding how human and nature interact with each other in terms of how humans value nature and how nature supports the well-being of people. So it's a two-directional thing, right? I've always addressed this from a mainly ecological perspective. So looking at how ecosystems with their ecological functions and structures, so the presence of habitats, the vegetation, the presence of different species, they actually generate ecological functions that support the well-being of people, ranging from providing clean water to providing resources, food, but also cultural opportunities to enjoy an ecosystem, a place, a landscape, or a seascape, as it is in our case study. Yes, because I didn't introduce where I come from. So I live and work in Venice, Italy. So my first and main case study is the lagoon of Venice. So we're dealing in a coastal lagoon, which is a quite well-known lagoon because it encloses the city of Venice, as you might know. So it is a lagoon with a very long history of changes, linking to what Andrew was mentioning. The lagoon would not be here if it weren't for people, because in the past centuries, the lagoon was going to be filled up with sediments. So the Venetian Republic diverted the rivers, which were bringing sediments into the lagoon, so that it didn't get filled up with sediments, because Venice needed the lagoon for commercial thriving. Okay, they needed the waterways. And so that actually worked well, so well that now the lagoon has the opposite problem. So the lagoon is now facing, from an ecological point of view, a trend that goes toward a marinization. Sorry for the bad pronunciation. So it's getting towards a marine bay. It's losing the heterogeneity of a lagoon ecosystem with different levels, so in the tidal, subtidal, the salt marshes. So the complex gradient of habitats and also chemical and physical gradients that characterize a lagoon ecosystem, they're somehow getting simplified towards a more marine fashion. And so it's a kind of, within this complex context, we're trying to understand how the lagoon functions support the well-being of the local people on one hand, and this is what I've been doing for about maybe 10 years since my master thesis. So mapping and quantifying these different ways. And more recently, I went maybe closer to Andrew's expertise, so more on the human side, to understand why people value the lagoon. So in different perspectives, so both as an instrument, so getting food or getting a place to enjoy, but also as a place with which they have a relationship. So the so-called relational values that were quite strongly felt by the local population. So it was quite interesting, I mean, for my research journey, to see how these two perspectives, so more ecological perspective on the functioning of the ecosystem and the more human perspective on how the ecosystem is important, how they do match. And that's quite some interesting, actually, considerations that can be done on that. How to link this with mountains? Well, from an ecological point of view, well, clearly we cannot disconnect, coastal system with mountain system, because they probably, in terms of water catchment, we get surely until the mountains. But also there are probably some similarities in terms of communities, in the sense that, well, Venice is an important city. It's a very well-known city worldwide. It's a worldwide known tourist destination, but can be thought as a village from the point of view of the people who's living there. We are less than 50,000 people, and even more, if we go beyond Venice itself, we have small islands around, which are even closer. I mean, there are smaller communities, and there is really an island effect in the islands, because there are even differences in the way we speak. I can recognize a person that comes from an island that is not even 1 kilometer far away from Venice, from the accent of their voice. So there are, some very specific characteristics of the different island and the local community that inhabits it. And I think this is a very strong commonality with mountains, where you have communities which can be, different from a valley to another, or from a side of a mountain to the other side, because they get sun and the other doesn't, and the vegetation is different. So, I mean, there are lots of common points, I think, between a lagoon system and mountains. But Fabio, I don't want to exceed my time, but if I can draw a point building on what Andrew said before. I really feel that, the role of disturbance and the acceptance of disturbance is a critical point for adaptation to climate change as well. So, on the one hand, for managing ecosystems like forests, from an ecological point of view, you need forests to be burned for them to be adapted to fire, right? So that the vegetation knows how to deal with fire. But if it never gets burned, it will never be adapted to that. But the same thing, somehow, I'm feeling it's happening here in Venice. I don't have scientific proof of that. It's just my personal feeling. which I would actually, I'm more than open to develop a research project on that. Just, I'm throwing this. But how now, so let me just give a bit of context. So Venice suffers of high tide, as you might have heard. So sea level rise is, the sea level is increasing, the land is going down, so the relative sea level rise makes Venice quite vulnerable to high tide events. High tide events which are getting more and more frequent and are projected to be more and more intense in the future. So we have built, the local government has built a series of gates which are located at the inlets of the lagoon, so at the nodes of connection between the lagoon and the sea. And these barriers are rising up when the tide is foreseen to exceed some level, okay? So these barriers have a long history. There has been a lot of corruption on that. But in the end, in 2020, they started to be used. They started to be used after a very bad high tide here hit the city very hard. So they started to use them. And so since then, we have almost never had high tide anymore. Not at all, because now they're using them so much because they want people clearly to. There have been a lot of controversial history on that infrastructure, so lots of people is against it. So, to build consensus on that infrastructure is now used very much, so to the point that we forget about high tide at all. Not that this is a historical thing for the city. It's something that dates back to 30, 40, maybe 50 years. So it's not a traditional adaptation to a high tide that Venice had. It's something relatively recent, but nevertheless, we're losing it completely because we are not exposed to the high tides anymore. So, and I laugh, but I remember we used to have some alarms ringing when the tide was foreseen to come. And it happened only once since my child, he's now 8 years old, only once since he was born that he heard that, okay? And he had no idea what it was. It was saying, "Mommy, what is this?" So, because he's not used to that sound, he's not used to high tides. For him, it's completely something not known, something he's not able to handle at all. And so, this kind of, lack of disturbance, which gets very close to what Andrew was saying, can be found also in a coastal system without burning, but with high tides. And we're experiencing it right now here. Now I close because I'm speaking too much.
Yeah, no, really, it's interesting because we a lot of times since we have our operative headquarters in Venice, we start with this idea that the mountain are villages in the mountain are island, but not island into the Green Sea. And the lagoon, Venice, it's are islands into the Blue Sea. So this connection you were making between the difference from the center of the town of Venice, high tourism, and just going few hundred meters outside, I went to make a round with Giovanni Cecconi with a boat that bring me into the different Barena and Mose and to see how it's complex, the lagoon. No? In the mountain, we have a problem of abandonment. Cioè, the area between 200 meters and the 800 meters completely abandoned and has the Venice Lagoon a highly anthropic area, was completely artificial. There's nothing natural there and to be up. So it's interesting. So I go back to Andrew and to go on this connection because I saw that there are something going in his head.
Oh, many ideas. I really enjoyed your comments, Silvia. I'll make one remark and I'll make some comments, which is just to say that I started out as a forest ecologist and ended up as an anthropologist. And Silvia is an ecologist who's also getting involved in these things. And I think that clearly the problems we're facing need people coming from all different trajectories that move across disciplinary boundaries, because we're dealing with landscapes where we have to understand social, cultural, ecological, geomorphological relationships, right? And so everyone has to learn new things and not get stuck in their disciplines, I would say. And change your methods to suit your problems rather than defining your problems by your methods, if I can be so simple. I love the example of Venice, by the way, because at one point I was comparing the town of Viareggio in my head with Venice. And of course, Viareggio has been draining the lake of Massachucoli since the last few hundred years. And Venice has been trying to maintain the Lagoon of Venice since the last hundreds of years. So we could imagine them as paired examples of different geomorphological results of a different political project. And I imagine myself, what if there was a maritime republic of Viareggio? What would happen to the lagoon of Massachucoli, right? It's just a story, but it's fun to think about, like a little science fiction story one could write. Disturbance, yes, I absolutely agree. And right now I'm writing about fire in California, but I could say the same about Italy also, that we need to build acceptance for disturbance and in social acceptance of disturbance, right? And that means sort of helping people understand when disturbance is helpful and when it's not helpful. And since we had big fires in California in 2020, and then prescribed burning, controlled burning has become much more important, and there is a lot of popular support for it. So I would say partially, but maybe quite a lot, when we smell smoke during the rainy, wet part of the year, you smell the smoke and you say, okay, good. They're doing some prescribed burning. They're making the landscape safer. So overall, we are accepting, at least in part of the year, that smoke, fire, and disturbance are good things. Now, in fact, of course, we need something like, I don't know, 50 or 100 times as much burning as we have in order to make the landscape fire resilient. But it's a start. So I would say building acceptance of disturbance is a really important project. And it's a kind of a social learning experiment of having people become comfortable with noticing, the disturbances in their daily lives and learning how to recognize this disturbance fits into the landscape history or waterscape, it doesn't matter. This disturbance is too much. The other part of highlands and seas, I'll just say, is actually sediment transport, right? Because the history of, so big fires destabilize, and you have big rainstorms afterwards, you get major sediment transport events. So truly, the question of fire and landscape transformation is one of the questions of the 21st century, because we're going to get more and more fires and we're going to get more and more landslides and sediment transport events. So we have to think about these things together. So that's just the reality. And maybe the historical reality in many places, actually both in California and Italy, is that the stabilizing effect of forest on slopes has been a big factor in forest protection, but also in fire protection. So again, it led us into certain forest policies, into certain attitudes to indigenous people and to shepherds. Maybe we made quite a few mistakes. We always make mistakes. But this is just saying that there is a material biological connection between hills and coastal regions. And I would say sediment transport, and the other one would probably be geomorphological change, the changing form of river systems due to geomorphological relationships. So trees stabilize the riverbanks, which prevent rivers from escaping their banks and causing floods. And that's a long story. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Just we are starting to connect because the second part of this roundtable is just so we think it like this, where you start to exchange ideas and points. So now we have the basis now of our complex world, the two complex world that will interact. And just I put another card on the table, and we have the communities now in all these actions. So okay, I make it first a question, so it's easiest to enter in this the second part. Now, many of your projects supposedly involve combines local knowledge with scientific thoughts. No, this is one of the problem that the different knowledge when they have to interact and exchange, start sometimes to have some problem. No, so how do you balance this connection between traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge, and how it works? I gave to Silvia now directly.
Sorry, the microphone. Yeah. Good question. I had a discussion this afternoon with the director of an institution here. Well, you know, Fabio, we're organizing a climathon. We will be one of a member of the jury. And this person was telling me, okay, but remember that we are a scientific institution, and involving people and local association to propose solutions as idea is risky because you don't know what may come out. Can be unscientific ideas, and of course we cannot give support to that. So there is always this tension, and I totally understand his point of view. I'm not criticizing, because it can be that you have a person that comes out saying climate change is not there, right? Okay, it's quite unlikely probably that a person with such a position would come to a climathon, but still, what is the role of an institution in giving the floor to different ideas that the people might have, that the public might have? So opening up to the ideas of the people, to the local knowledge that they hold, because they might be involved in local traditional activities and so on, while at the same time maintain a scientific integrity, right? So I mean, I felt very tangible this tension right this afternoon when I was talking with this person. And I don't really have an answer. Honestly, I don't really have an answer. The thing, I mean, a key possibly is to give the people the floor to express freely what they think on one hand, but also to put them in a perspective that is not about criticizing, but it is about proposing. So kind of trying to build upon their knowledge rather than focusing on getting comments on some subjects that might be the focus of a research or of a study. I know I'm giving a very general answer, but I mean, the focus on creation and generation of ideas are propositive can be a way of, you know, finding ways to combine local knowledge with scientific knowledge.
Okay, this is the main problem. Now you put on the floor the main problem of participation. Everybody, when we said, oh, we make a participative processes, the policymakers, the scientists, the technician start to say, please don't, because they are really afraid, and it's difficult to involve local communities, no? And but for an example, in the new forestry strategy, national forestry strategy, Italian forestry strategy, it's written that you have to involve the local communities. I pass the floor to Andrew about these thematics. We discussed it a lot of time, so please, Andrew.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I loved Sarah's comment in the chat about smoke in Sardinia, so I really enjoyed that. I would love to learn more. So we're at a very interesting time now around what science relationship to its publics. So right now in America, they're dismantling the vaccine certification system by the federal government. So science has somehow lost its credibility, and we could say that's an example of too much participation by the wrong people. So it's a very difficult question, right? So we have talked about participation for a long time, and now maybe we're thinking, well, maybe this is too much. So I only say that because it's on my mind. I don't have an answer there. So yes, there's a nice term that comes from science studies from Sheila Jasanoff, which is called technologies of humility, where I think that if we engage in dialogues where we are open about what we think we know, but also about our uncertainty, it's more credible for the public. And giving other people a chance to explain what they know and where they're coming from, then we don't have to say yes or no. We can just say different people know different things. That's very utopian, right? But I would say that that's a partial response. Uh, One of the ways that I try to work in this domain is to create like a frame for dialogue. And the frame that I try to create is something about the history of the landscape, like how we got here and what are the different forces and projects and human behavior, human natural, what do you call them, processes that have been created. And that somehow maybe creates a frame in which people can talk. And I can't say that it works or doesn't work because I'm working on it, but I would say that maybe we can do work in shaping dialogue through these sort of narrative frames, right? That's my suggestion, my hope. If it works or doesn't work, I'll tell you in 10 years, perhaps. Then spaces of dialogue, I think that we have to remember not everyone has the courage to speak or the time to speak. And so participation, we know from research, is often dominated by loud voices and by people who have more time. So we can't idealize participation. And we have to also think about who are the people who can't come to the meeting, but who need to also have their perspectives heard. So homeless people who live, I don't know, by the riverbank or in a hut in the woods. A mother who is too busy taking her kids to school, who also knows something about the world, right? So those people, we have to think about how to reach them. And when we say participation, I think we move too quickly to, well, we have a meeting where everyone comes and talks. And that's obviously very important, but maybe we also have to think about other ways of learning from other points of view, and bringing those into the process. And sometimes that means going and talking to people and bringing back their points of view. Some people are too shy to speak. Some people are doing things that are illegal. Much of the burning in Italy is basically illegal. Lots of burning happens. Those shepherds who burn are never, ever going to say anything in a meeting about what they do. Not ever. And yet they're the most important actors in shaping the landscape in some parts of the world, of parts of Italy. So we have to, yes, support participation, but also recognize that the spaces of participation are not open to everyone.
You center the point that you two center two main points. One's the problem, but for us it's already solved. Never we will ask to an engineer how to solve the problem of the trees, and never we will ask to a forester how to build a bridge or a road. No, so every scientist has his own competences, and we know that they are limited to this. We will ask, so the forester will ask to the engineer how to build a resilient bridge, or how he should build the road. But they have to collaborate, but have different knowledge. So Andrew said that we cannot ask to all citizens everything, but they know very well what they are doing each day. So if you go to school, you know which are the problem of parking the car, take your child off the car when it's raining, and go into the entrance of the school. You know very well. Maybe the solution that you propose is not the best, but you know the problem very well. So this is one point that it's really interesting. Another point is I was thinking on Susan Watmore, a scientist on England that I followed a long time because he was basing his intervention on competency groups, building a relation with a groups, a selected group of citizens that they will become ambassadors. They will understand the policymakers, scientists, and people point of views. They will be the ambassador to other people. So this is another strategy we can use, not to involve people in the things we are doing, explaining, answering to their question, making them experts. And I'd like the space of dialogue, the methodologies of participation. I have used a lot of time participative methodologies in within the Monte Pisano communities, in other situations in mountain in different parts of the world. And at the end, if we use well the instrument we have, and we have good facilitators, people that knows their works, no, it's not just, oh, we make what's the one of the World Cafe. It's the main instrument used everywhere, from everybody. But you have to know very well how to manage a World Cafe, or we become a chaos. So there are methodologies, there are possibilities to work with participation. Participation is not putting people in the house, in a space, and let them talk as somebody think. The burning, the example you make, Andrew, is perfect, because we know very well that most of the big wildfire caused from this burning of pasture in the mountain are caused from the problem that they cannot stay there to take care of the fire, because if some policemen arrive there and they found them there, they will be get in prison, so they have consequences. So they burn and they escape. And this is the problem. It's the abandonment of the fire, not the fire by himself, that give problems. So just I'm putting on the table a lot of things, but this could be a first point about collaboration. No, so you have started this. You, Silvia, start from this example of the climathon, no, and you have another example of collaboration with citizens and with people that was not scientists.
Yes. Well, a couple of years ago, we made, well, first of all, it started with a survey to the people to get to know the context. The research question was to see how do they value nature. So what I was briefly introducing before. And then based on that survey, we built up a workshop where people from the local community were invited, a very small amount of people indeed, we were 10 people, envisioning futures for the lagoon. So it was like having them making the exercise to think how the lagoon could be in the future. So that was not a technical workshop meant to get to solutions or ideas, but it was like an exercise to think of how the lagoon could be in the future. So two reflections on that. First of all, even the survey, I noticed that the people, so I was asking them why they value the lagoon, and I was asking them would they like the lagoon to be in the future, and they were happy that the people were going to ask them. They are not used to have a voice. They're not used to be listened to. And there were people writing me in the notes. There was an open space at the end of the survey for comments or whatever. Oh, this is such a good initiative that should, and I've got like in 3 months more than 1,000 responses. So really a big amount. So I was impressed by that. And so the first thing is people should be listened to, which doesn't mean that to bring them, take them to a room and let them speak. Of course, facilitating a meeting is something that has to be done with people with skills. I don't have them, for example. I'm not a facilitator. We had a facilitator in the workshop, and we will have facilitators in the Climathon, because I know it's something I cannot handle without a proper preparation, clearly. But so it requires methods, it requires skilled people, but in the end, I do believe that even if they don't have a scientific knowledge, they have a lot to say, because they know, getting back to Andrew's initial thoughts, they know the history of the place. They have lived the history in their own skin. They know the tales of their grandparents. They know what their fathers and mothers used to do. And so, this kind of knowledge, and I know I'm speaking to anthropologists who know this much more than I do, but this is a precious resource which should be considered also by scientists when designing solutions. So, there is space for dialogues without pretending that people has some scientific inputs, but there are lots of other kinds of inputs which are crucial also for the scientific solution to be designed. So this space, I think, is very important. And what does it require? It requires integration between different disciplines, clearly. So again, back to what Andrew was saying. So, but not that I myself as an ecologist have to know everything, but myself as an ecologist have to be open-minded to work with an anthropologist and understand the importance of his work in relation to mine, and design together a process, right? So this is the crucial part of it, transdisciplinarity. And on the other hand, I also do believe that there is space, and this is more related to the Climathon we're going to have in less than a month. There is space for solutions that are not technical. So, for example, social solution. I'm thinking about the local people here, that might be people who's more vulnerable. We have lots of people which are old, with reduced mobility or with disability. And in that case, networks of help are crucial, and you probably don't even have the sanitary system which formally provides that. But those, voluntary help and support networks of support that can be created are crucial and can be a key part of a solution. But those come from the people. They probably cannot be just, put on top from the top down, say you have to do that. No, because it's part of humanity. It's part of, I know you, I know how do you stay, I know that your son or daughter is not here, so I know you need help. Those small things, which if we were able to, network and create synergies among all these small initiatives, then we could build a real network of support, which could be a key part of our resilience to a changing climate, getting back to what I'm currently working on. So, there are lots of different, aspects, which I'm sure, I'm opening, we say in Italian, sfondare una porta aperta. Clearly, you know those things more than I do.
Yeah, but it's exactly what we are trying to build with this project. Now, starting to open, to sfondare le porte aperte. Cioè, we try to connect the people that knows that we have to work together, and we have to work together with the citizens. No, it, when you were speaking, Silvia, I was thinking for us it's easiest because I can. One of the concepts that I love from Andrew is the truescapes idea. Now, the idea that the landscape should be crossed. You have to walk into the landscape to understand, to have to see. And the difficulty of your landscapes is that you cannot go below the surface of the sea. So you see, it's like to see the landscape only on the top of the trees. You cannot go understand. So it's difficult your work, and to discuss with the people, maybe the few fishermen that knows what's going on under the surface. I remember in the Gulf of Mexico how they could read the fishermen. They could read the little waves, the color of the sea, the color of this, of the I don't know, I don't remember the clouds and all this multidimensional space to understand at what deep to send their nets and to fish. So it's a real complex to understand a man into the surface from two areas. In the forest, it's easiest. No, and about the collaboration, it's interesting because we have to think more ideas about how involve people. I give to Andrew because we are nearly to the end.
Oh, I don't think I have an answer. I'm not. I think you have more experience at facilitating workshops and events than I do. Um, I mean, I have one thought, which is that maybe for all experts become overconfident, and maybe scientists risk becoming overconfident. And of course, if we look at the history of science, or the history of our disciplines, or the history of landscape projects, we make lots of mistakes. So I think it's good for us to recognize our mistakes. And one problem with the scientific disciplines is maybe we don't recognize them enough. I'll give you one example. Um, Introducing exotic species to Italy of chestnut, which caused, I think, the diseases which damaged chestnut cultivation in Italy very gravely in the early 20th century, right? Directly the result of what people thought was the best thing they could do. This is 1920s reforestation, giving peasants good trees, Japanese and Chinese chestnut. You do something that you think is so fantastic, and then you do something very destructive. And we're bound to make mistakes. That's just what it is to be human, right? But if we learn examples of our disciplinary errors, maybe through history, maybe through landscape projects, makes us a little bit more humble, and it makes us kind of always be watching out for signs that we're wrong. So that's not an answer to your question. It's an answer to a thing I wanted to mention. But on the organizing participation, I think that you are better than me, and even Celia also. So I, I love what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And we had a lot of experience to make people participate in our experience and uh, and to the general point of view. When we start to ask, but the women on the Monte Pisano, what are they doing? And we discover another reality, completely different, another narrative. No, and we discovered that the mountain since 17th century was woman on the mountain. Men were doing other things. So it's interesting, the different point of view of each actor, each stakeholder has his own point of view, and we have to put together all this map like a jigsaw puzzle, to make the picture, the complete picture. So I have to close. We are at 59 precise. So what two or three ideas? Okay, landscapes embody knowledge. And in the landscapes are not only the mountain landscape, the town, the city landscape, the internal area landscape to the Venetian lagoon landscape. And we should understand that there are landscapes that we don't know. It's not easy to access, like the undersea landscapes. So these are really important because this landscape can help communities. The understanding of these landscapes can help communities to understand how to adapt to the change first. The local engagement and participatory methods are not easy to manage, but it's possible, it's working. Each one of us has his own positive experience. So just we have to go on in these ideas, because the connection, this is the pillars of European strategies are putting together scientists, policymakers, NGOs, companies, and citizens. Okay, and if they work together, we can do great things. And okay, resilience, it's have always to be connected between humans and non-humans. This is something that we like a lot, this word as anthropologists, human and not humans, or human and more than humans, we say. And this was the thematics of the last roundtable. And there we can discover a lot of things. So please, I thank you very much for this time you put the time to take to exchange your ideas, because they will be really important. And as we said, there are a lot of channels you can stay connected with the project Hi.Co.Ma. All these recordings are open and will stay open in the future to the website. And there are a community on WhatsApp, there are a newsletter, there are a website. So if somebody that listened to this will follow us, it's welcome. We have a YouTube channel too, so please keep on. You will have your expert profile on the website, and you can add, post, and share ideas with all the community. As expert from Georgia shared today that she win the woman challenge for European Woman Prize for agriculture, woman in agriculture challenges. So it's really interesting that connecting these people. So again, thank you very much to everybody, and see you the last Saturday for the real key lesson, because these are just something going in deep to some thematics, and we have the key lesson that is something more easy, that is for the course. So thank you again, and bye-bye to everybody. Last
Bye-bye. Thank
turn
you.
of
Hey,
words.
Nice
Thanks.
to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Bye, ciao.